Hello, my name is Odessa. 3 weeks ago, my sister threw a lavish promotion party, one where she made sure I wasn't just humiliated, but erased. In front of 300 guests, she smashed a chocolate cake into my face and laughed. But I didn't cry, I didn't run. Instead, I connected my laptop to the ballroom screen and revealed exactly who I was, Senior Vice President at Microsoft Azure. The room went silent. So here's my question. What happens when the family who raised you starts treating you like an outsider, just because you finally outgrew the box they kept you in? The door of the black sedan shut behind me with a dull, expensive click, and I stood for a moment on the curb, breathing in Chicago air. A cool spring evening, crisp enough to raise goosebumps along my arms. The sky had already begun to dim into slate blue, the last traces of daylight fading behind the skyline. Street lamps flickered alive one by one, throwing soft golden pools of light onto the polished sidewalks. And the city was familiar in every brick, every echo of traffic along Michigan Avenue, and yet, as I adjusted the shawl around my shoulders and gripped the leather tote at my side, I felt like a visitor, not a returning daughter, not a sister, a guest in my own home city. Inside my bag, nestled carefully in tissue paper, was the gift I had chosen months earlier for this occasion. A hand-blown glass sculpture, delicate swirls of sea green and amber captured in frozen light. I had ordered it from a gallery in Seattle, where I now lived and worked in quiet anonymity within the tech world. I had carried it through airports and baggage claims because I believed, naively perhaps, that my sister would love it, that she would hold it in her hands and see my thoughtfulness. As I crossed the marble steps into the downtown gala hall, my stomach tightened the way it always did before family gatherings. I rehearsed a smile, smoothing the corners of my mouth as if I could will the night to go gently. This was supposed to be Callista's evening, a celebration. I told myself I could endure the small slights, the familiar hierarchy of attention. At the reception table, the organizer greeted guests with a wide smile, passing out seating cards tied neatly with gold ribbon. I waited, expectant, scanning the rows of cards. My name was nowhere to be found. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Excuse me, my name doesn't seem to be here. Odessa Lynn." The woman blinked, rifled through her neat stacks again, and then looked up at me with a soft apology. "It must have been a printing error. Don't worry, we'll find you a seat." Her tone was kind enough, but the sting landed anyway. A printing error. Always an error when it came to me. I stepped into the ballroom with the cardless ache still clinging to me. The grandeur struck first, crystal chandeliers throwing prisms of light across marble floors, waitstaff in tuxedos gliding with silver trays, ivory cloths draped across round tables. Each table gleamed with place settings and menus embossed with the words, "Family Friends of Callista Row." At the center of every table, instead of flowers, stood glossy flyers. I picked one up, curiosity catching my breath. Callista's portrait beamed from the page, her name bold in elegant serif, the word "Congratulations" curling beneath in gold ink. Below, a list of key family members scrolled down. Mother, father, honored sister. Names I knew well, except for mine. There was no mention of Odessa Lynn. My fingers trembled as I set the flyer back. Heat spread through me, that peculiar wave that came when insult masqueraded as formality. It was not the first time. Microaggressions had been the wallpaper of my life, easy to dismiss by others, suffocating for me. But to stand in a room that proclaimed itself a family celebration and see myself erased in glossy print, that was a dagger hidden beneath a smile. I drifted backward, the ballroom spinning slightly. A memory rose unbidden, colliding with the present. I was 10, standing in the living room holding the science fair ribbon I had won for a project on solar energy. I had built a working model from scraps of aluminum and glass. Proudly, I began explaining my experiment to my parents. Callista, only 12, clapped enthusiastically at first. Then, seamlessly, she shifted the conversation to her upcoming piano recital. Within minutes, my ribbon was forgotten, my voice lost under the louder melody of her spotlight. My mother clasped Callista's hand, murmuring her praises, while my name disappeared into wallpaper. Back in the ballroom, I exhaled through my nose, steadying myself. Stay calm, I thought. This is her evening. I will not disrupt. I will observe, not intrude. At the refreshment station near the back, I spotted my mother in conversation with one of her old friends. I touched her arm lightly. "Mom," I began, careful, "could you explain the guest list flyer?" She turned, startled, as if she hadn't expected to see me. Her face softened into a polite smile. "Oh, Odessa, nobody meant to slight you. It must be an oversight. Just sit wherever you'd like. I'm so pleased you came." She patted my cheek as though the gesture itself could erase the absence of my name. Her voice was warm on the surface, but polished. Practiced gentleness, not genuine remorse. I nodded, forcing myself to step away. As I turned, I caught the whisper of my aunt's voice, not as quiet as she thought. "She never shows up to support us anyway." The words were aimed toward my mother, but landed squarely in my chest. When I met their eyes, both women smiled stiffly, like masks slipping back into place. The ache spread, deep and familiar. Pressure built inside me like steam sealed tight within a kettle. A question gnawed at me. Should I confront them now? Should I cut through the decorum with the truth? But then I saw the staff preparing the stage for Callista's entrance. The spotlight was about to turn on. And though my heart screamed for confrontation, I told myself firmly, "Not tonight. Not like this." I've held my dignity too long to throw it away in a burst of fury. I lingered near the stage entrance, adjusting my shawl with trembling fingers. Through a crack in the curtain, I glimpsed her shadow. My breath caught. And then she emerged. Callista. The gown shimmered as she stepped into the light, sleek, floor-length, perfectly fitted. My gaze dropped to the fabric, the cut, the color. My own dress, carefully chosen months ago to surprise her, matched hers exactly. Same deep sapphire hue, same elegant drape. Her shoulders brushed mine as she passed, her perfume lingering sharp and sweet. She tilted her head slightly, lips curving into the faintest smirk. Not surprise, not coincidence. A knowing look, a message. She didn't have to say the words. "I knew what you'd wear, and I made sure to wear it better." I froze where I stood, pressed against the wall as all eyes turned toward her. The ballroom lights seemed to dim everywhere except where she walked, basking in applause and admiration. My throat tightened, the smirk carved into me like a blade, and in that moment, something crystallized inside me. This would not be remembered as just her celebration. Tonight, beneath crystal chandeliers and false applause, I would begin to stake my claim. Tonight, Odessa Lynn would stop being the forgotten name at the bottom of the list. Tonight, the silence that had defined me would begin to fracture. Her smirk still lingered in my mind like a stain you can't quite scrub off. I stood frozen in place for a moment longer, watching Callista glide into the center of attention with all the grace of someone who'd rehearsed every move. I exhaled through my nose and turned away, searching the room for the table they had promised to assign me. A staff member waved me toward a side section. It was near the kitchen entrance, just shy of the swinging doors. The scent of steamed vegetables and warming trays hovered close. The chair was tucked behind a decorative pillar, half blocking my view of the stage. I paused. Then I saw it, the seat at the family table, front and center, gleaming with gold calligraphy. Reserved, row family. One chair sat empty. I knew that chair. I had paid for it myself when I RSVP'd and confirmed attendance. I had even upgraded my seat with the event coordinator last week, transferring the fee with a small note. I'd like to support my sister's evening in full. That empty seat was mine. Instead, I was now stationed next to a waiter's supply stand where pitchers of water and trays of breadsticks lined up like soldiers. Someone had decided that the youngest sister, the one who flew across 2 states, deserved the view of a staff station and a potted plant. I adjusted my napkin on my lap, carefully, slowly. If they thought they were going to humiliate me quietly, they'd have to do better than folding chairs and fake flowers. About 20 minutes passed. The hum of chatter was interrupted by the tapping of a microphone. I looked up just as a server approached our table, carrying a small box wrapped in a white bow. The box was familiar. It was the exact designer packaging I had requested from the luxury brand Callista loved. Limited edition, cream-colored leather bag with gold hardware. I sat up straighter, heart lifting for the briefest second. The server walked right past me. My chest tightened. He headed for the head table and stopped at Callista. She turned her attention with a radiant smile, taking the gift with exaggerated delight. A small crowd clapped. She held it up like a trophy. My custom card was tucked neatly under the bow. I'd spent a week writing the right message, funny, tender, strong. But as Callista opened the lid, she slipped out a card with elegant script I'd never seen before. She read aloud. To Callista, our pride, our joy, our heart, love, Mom and Dad. There it was. They had removed my name, replaced it. Just like that. The applause was polite, but warm. Callista beamed, dabbing at her eyes as if moved. The crowd responded in kind, some standing, some raising glasses. I remained seated, frozen. A breath stuck in my throat. My hands trembled slightly on the white cloth. I stared at the spot where my handwriting should have been. My signature, my effort, my thoughtfulness. It had been erased. I blinked. Not tears, just clarity. She stood now, gift in hand, stepping toward the stage. The room quieted again. Callista adjusted the mic with her practiced poise. I just want to thank everyone here tonight, she began, her voice syrupy smooth. Especially those who stood by me when the journey wasn't easy, who believed in me before I believed in myself. She went on to name them. Mom, Dad, Aunt Diane, her college roommate, even her high school guidance counselor. Not once did she say my name. She glanced across the room. Her eyes landed on me, just long enough to register, then flicked away with the kind of nonchalance you reserve for someone seated behind a trash bin. Something inside me snapped, not like a scream, but like a switch flipping. I pulled my phone from my clutch and opened my messages. My thumb hovered over the screen as I typed, I'm not feeling well, leaving early. Enjoy your evening. But I couldn't press send. I stared at the screen, then I slowly deleted every word. Instead, I sat through the rest of her speech, nodding politely with the rest of the audience. But in my mind, I replayed every slight. My 30th birthday that was, accidentally, forgotten. The holiday dinner where Callista showed up 3 hours late and still received praise for making the effort. The college graduation where she got flowers for showing up, and I got a pat on the back for finishing early. It was always like this. I waited until the crowd thinned and the music lowered. Then I stood and walked with purpose through the reception room. I found her alone near the hallway mirror, adjusting her lipstick. Callista, I said, softly but firmly. She turned, eyes wide, hand still holding the lipstick. I pointed to the handbag. Where did the card come from? She raised a brow, then laughed lightly. What card? The one you read aloud, I replied. That wasn't the one that came with the gift. Oh, she shrugged. The assistant mixed them up, probably. You know how these events are, so many moving pieces. Anyway, thank you for the bag. It's gorgeous. I nodded slowly, then tilted my head toward the head table. And the seat? What about it? You know that was mine. A flicker crossed her face, something between annoyance and amusement. Well, Mom said you weren't sure you'd come, so they filled it. I confirmed 2 weeks ago. She paused, then smiled. Details, Odessa. You always get caught up in details. My jaw tensed. You really think this is how it ends? Callista slipped her lipstick back into her clutch and looked me dead in the eye. Then she smiled and walked away, as if I'd just been dismissed from my own life. She didn't even look back. Just kept walking, that gliding stride of someone who'd gotten everything she wanted and didn't care who she had to step over to get it. I stood still for a while, right where she'd left me. It was like watching the final scene of a bad movie, except I wasn't watching. I was in it. The music had shifted again, softer now, mellow jazz playing as servers refreshed drinks and passed out mini cheesecakes. The lighting dimmed a few notches, more mood than celebration. I wandered back toward the quieter side of the hall, finding a place along the wall near a column wrapped in faux ivy. From there, I could see the large screen behind the stage. A slideshow had begun playing, Callista's career journey, the MC announced. Each slide showed her at various milestones: internship, early management, corporate retreat in Aspen. I watched, arms crossed, willing myself to feel nothing. But then the sixth slide appeared. It was a photograph from 5 years ago. Callista stood in the center of a team, all wearing matching shirts. In front of them sat a cake, 3 tiers, decorated with fondant logos and piped frosting that read, "Together we rise." I recognized that cake instantly. I had made it. That night flooded back to me. I'd worked a full day at Microsoft, skipped dinner, and stayed up until 2 a.m. designing that thing. Every detail was deliberate. The colors, the company slogans, even the edible glitter. And the message card I'd attached had read, "To the team that made it all happen, Odessa." Except in the photo now, there was no card, no mention of me. Callista had held the knife in the photo, her name the only one mentioned in the caption scrolling beneath. Team gift presented by Callista Rowe. That was the first time she erased me. I leaned against the wall, letting the memory run its course. I had confronted her back then too, asked her, gently, why she didn't include my name when she presented the cake. Her answer was flippant. "It was easier to say it was from me," she'd shrugged. "Didn't think you'd care." And back then, I didn't push it. I believed her. I was always believing her. There was the time she helped with my college applications by taking my essays and using them for her own scholarship entry. She won. I didn't. When I found out, she said it must have been a mix-up in the file names. There was the job interview she landed because I referred her. Later, she told the story at family dinner as if she'd gotten it all on her own, claiming, "I guess my resume just speaks for itself." It was always like this. Now, here she was again, center stage, literally and metaphorically, telling the story of her rise like she'd built the mountain herself. And I was once again watching from the shadows, expected to smile and clap. But something had shifted, not just in the room, but in me. This time, I wasn't sad. I was clear. Callista didn't just forget me. She rewrote me out of her story, on purpose, over and over again. And the worst part? No one noticed. My mother still called her the star of the family. Dad used to joke, "You girls are like night and day, Callista the dreamer, Odessa the doer." I never realized how much that line had meant until now. They saw her light. They used my labor to fuel it. I was still staring at the screen when I noticed someone standing beside me. A young woman, petite, probably in her early 20s, with a staff lanyard around her neck and a slightly nervous energy. She looked around before slipping something into my hand, a folded square of notepaper. I opened it. "I know what they did. If you need proof, I've got screenshots. Elise." I looked at her, startled. She nodded slightly, then turned away, disappearing behind the catering partition. My heart raced. I tucked the note into my clutch without hesitation, like it was gold, because in that moment it was not just evidence, but validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. Someone else had seen it too, maybe more than one. I watched the screen fade to black as the slideshow ended. Applause rang out again, polite and brief. Callista walked off the stage to more praise and more wine, hugging coworkers and thanking guests. But I stayed rooted to my spot. Because something was building in me, stronger than shame, deeper than hurt. It wasn't rage exactly, it was readiness. I wasn't going to walk out of here defeated. I wasn't going to let her have the final word. Not this time. I followed the thread of her voice, that carefully measured tone she always wielded like a weapon, into a quieter hallway just off the main ballroom. Out there, the music and laughter of the gala dulled, reduced to a muffled hum that felt miles away, though only a set of doors separated me from the celebration. My pulse, which had been thundering while the chandeliers blazed above, slowed just enough for clarity to return. The air in the side hall was cooler, calmer, touched faintly with the smell of polished wood and aging velvet. I slipped behind a heavy curtain into a side alcove designed as a retreat for guests who needed a break from the noise. A cushioned chair sat in shadows, dimly lit by a single wall sconce. I lowered myself into it, exhaling as if I had carried years of silence to that very spot. From the pocket of my clutch, I retrieved the folded note Elise had slipped into my hand earlier. Its paper edges had grown soft and creased from the way I had held it again and again throughout the night. I unfolded it slowly, smoothing it across my palm. The words in her quick, angled handwriting struck with sharp simplicity. "I know what they did. If you need proof, I've got screenshots." My breath caught. Heat rose into my cheeks, part disbelief, part vindication. Elise had been watching too. I pulled my phone out and scrolled through old emails, my thumb trembling slightly as I reopened folders I had promised myself I'd never look at again. Deleted drafts, forwarded memos, projects I had poured myself into, only to see them reappear under Callista's name. There it was again, her same pattern. My work copied nearly verbatim, a subject line tweaked, my effort repackaged as her brilliance. She had been erasing me not only at family gatherings, but in the professional world too, and I had let the world think her shine was her own. A server drifted by on the other side of the curtain, the faint aroma of white wine and someone's heavy perfume trailing in. I stayed hidden in shadow, and in that quiet, an old memory surfaced, vivid and cutting. My 25th birthday. The kitchen of our parents' house, warm with candlelight and chatter. A homemade cake set on the table, frosted with pale pink. My name had been piped clumsily in icing, though when it appeared in front of me, the final letters had been smeared away. My mother brushed it off, saying lightly, "Oh, the plate spilled. Accidents happen." Everyone laughed. Callista laughed hardest, and I forced myself to smile. But something in me twisted then, a small fracture. Looking back now, I knew. Those accidents had never been accidents. They were part of the pattern. 1,000 little erasures, brushed off as nothing, each one cutting deeper than the last. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and let the memory settle into resolve. No more excuses, no more diminishment. I opened my messages and typed a line into a blank draft. "You've stolen enough from me. Tonight ends differently." My finger hovered over the send button. For a heartbeat, I wanted her to see it in black and white, to know that I saw her theft clearly. But then, just as quickly, I deleted it. Words on a screen would not carry the weight I needed. Not anymore. I slipped the phone back into my clutch, rose from the cushioned chair, and pushed the curtain aside. The gala's glow swept back over me, chandeliers blazing, music resuming its dominance, voices bouncing off marble floors. I moved forward, threading my way past smaller clusters of guests who had grown quieter now that the night was waning. The ballroom seemed both crowded and hollow, as if all its radiance had gathered into one person at the center. And there she was, Callista. She stood near a tall cocktail table, posture sculpted into perfection, glass of champagne poised in her hand like a prop. Her hair gleamed beneath the chandelier light, every strand calculated. I approached, each step deliberate, until she turned, slowly, gracefully, her eyes locking onto mine. "You've stolen enough from me," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the air with deliberate clarity. For the briefest fraction of a second, she froze. A tiny flicker of unease cracked her mask. Then her lips curled into that familiar, practiced smirk. She arched a brow and spoke lightly, dismissively. "Odessa, everything isn't about you." Her tone dripped with casual superiority, but there was a brittle edge beneath it, a sharpness that betrayed the fact that my words had landed. I pressed my lips into a firm line, steady. "Not everything is your story, but it isn't mine to erase anymore." She lifted the glass to her lips, sipping slowly, feigning calm. "You act like you deserve more than you were given." I held her gaze and felt no tremor in my voice. "I do deserve more. I deserve to be named, to be seen, to hold space." Her hand trembled then, only slightly, but enough. The champagne glass wavered. For the first time, I watched her falter, and I knew she could feel me watching. I turned on my heel and began to walk away, moving through the ballroom with my head high. The air felt sharper, alive. My clutch was steady in my hands, my shawl brushed my arms like armor. From behind me, I heard her call out, voice strained. "You wouldn't dare!" I paused mid-step, fingers tightening around the clasp of my clutch. Slowly, I turned my head over my shoulder and met her eyes across the room. I didn't answer. I let silence speak its own verdict, sharper than words. Then I turned back and kept walking, gliding past guests who pretended not to listen, past servers who paused mid-step, past chandeliers whose crystals caught and fractured the light like sparks falling. I felt, for the first time, both invisible and unmistakably present. She was watching me leave. I could feel her stare following me, lips parted in uncertainty, her confidence cracked. I reached my chair, the empty place that had once made me feel small. I sat, spine straight, head high, and let the weight of the moment settle over me. Darkness fell between us. Not an accident, not a mistake, but something inevitable, something she could no longer erase. I stepped back into the main ballroom, under softer lights, voices mingling like a hushed storm. It was about 10 p.m., and the gala had eased past its formal high point. Notes of vanilla cake and floral arrangements lingered in the air. I held my breath, bracing for what would come next. I caught the tail end of a toast and slipped in among the guests. Callista stood beside the podium, mic in hand, radiant in that dress she'd coincidentally matched with mine. Her smile looked practiced, but her eyes were sharp, and I knew who they were aimed at. She raised her glass, then spoke. "Some people just show up and expect VIP treatment. You'd think they were running Microsoft or something." Her voice rang out, casual. The crowd laughed politely. The whole room shifted, glancing, scanning. Some looked at me. I kept my face neutral. Frustration pricked through me like a needle. That line was meant to wound, but I wouldn't let it bleed me out. A moment later, a group gathered for photos near the stage. One man approached, mistaking me for an assistant. "Hey, can you take this?" He handed me his phone. I accepted. I stood behind them, smiling politely, clicking the shot. No one around corrected him. Inside, my bones trembled. That simple act, dismissing me as +1, was worse than any insult. Every time I had tried to assert, I was minimized. Tonight, they kept elevating her by downgrading me. While I was lining up the shot, memory flickered. Years ago, my first tech grant. I'd come home excited, waving the certificate. My parents nodded, then turned to Callista's recital invitation. The next day, she performed. It was more celebrated. Viewers commented on her heart and talent. Mine became supporting sister's sacrifice. That night had seared into me. I would never let them speak over me again. My phone buzzed. A text from Juno. "Are you okay?" Saw what she said. I typed back. "This is just beginning." I turned and spotted the projection screen still dark. The AV table stood nearby, monitors and cables silent. My fingers brushed the bag at my side. Laptop lurked inside. I assessed distance, angles. Could I ask permission tonight? A final tribute? The thought tasted like risk, but I'd accepted risk long ago. The toast finished. Guests applauded. Callista smiled and returned to her seat, but her eyes found mine for a split second. Calculating. I rose and walked toward the AV technician. He glanced at me warily. "I'd like to request a final tribute," I said in that calm voice I had honed through years of suppression. He frowned. "We already ran the slideshow." I nodded. "I just want one more slide." He hesitated. The murmurs around us grew louder. People glanced sideways. Callista watched too, expressions still guarded. He tapped the console keys. The screen flickered. I connected my laptop quietly. My heart pounded, fingers trembling just slightly. The technician looked at me, uncertain. I nodded. He said, 3, 2, 1. The ballroom lights dimmed further. Every head turned. I watched their faces as the first slide appeared. A crisp design, my name, my title. Odessa Lin, Senior Vice President, Microsoft Azure. Beneath, a caption. Built foundation behind this partnership. Then the second slide. A photo of that cake from 5 years ago. Callista holding the knife. team around it. But there it was, plainly written in elegant script across the image, baked by Odessa. The corridor echoed in hush. Gasps rippled through the hall, a flush of whispers, then silence, then tension. Callista's face drained. I stepped forward, voice steady. That cake, my project. That gift, you read the wrong card. And that seat, you took what you assumed was yours. A stunned hush. Someone whispered, "She's serious." Another muttered, "No way." I didn't wait for apologies. The next slide showed email threads where Callista forwarded my work as her own. Lines traced through subjects, turning Team Plan by Odessa into Project Lead, Callista R. The proof was visual, cold, inescapable. Callista stood, rigid. "You hacked this?" she spat. I shook my head. "I just reclaimed it." I tapped the next slide, a quote I'd drafted earlier, tucked into my files. Truth isn't about making noise. It's about having the courage to show up when lies have ruled too long. There were cheers, some small, respectful. Others gaped. The laughter from before had twisted uneasy. Callista's father rose, face pale. My mother's lips parted. I walked past them on my way to the exit line, my shoulders straight, my gaze level. They would remember tonight for more than her promotion. And before they could silence me, the projection stood as my voice. The chandeliers flickered, and for a moment the ballroom seemed to breathe with one body. Then the lights dimmed further, until only the glow of the wide projection screen washed over the marble floor. Every voice fell into silence. It was as if the entire room inhaled at once, holding its breath, waiting. My own chest tightened painfully. I steadied my stance, forcing my hands not to shake, heart bracing as though for impact. The first slide appeared in sharp clarity. My LinkedIn portrait, one I had almost forgotten about, looked back at me from the screen. Professional, polished. Behind me, a blue-gray gradient, the same one millions had seen. Beneath it, in bold, Odessa Lin, Senior Vice President, Microsoft Azure. For one heartbeat, the entire ballroom froze. Then, like dominoes, the details followed. My corporate credentials, my internal ID, project overviews I had spearheaded, initiatives known across the industry but stripped of my name whenever Callista or others retold the family narrative. There they were now, undeniable, flashing in perfect sequence for everyone to see. Faces turned in unison. Conversations broke mid-sentence. Glasses clinked softly against tables. My mother's lips parted with a faint, involuntary gasp, her eyes darting toward my father, who sat stiff as stone. And Callista's face went chalk white. The flush of power drained from her cheeks, her jaw clenched hard enough to pulse. Her fingers trembled when she lifted her glass, trying to disguise the quake. Near the bar, someone whispered, not quietly enough, "I didn't even know she worked at Microsoft." Another guest echoed, "She's Azure." That's huge. A couple began to clap, tentative at first, uncertain if it was allowed, but like sparks feeding flame, the applause spread, hesitant palms striking against palms, then gathering confidence, swelling louder. I should have felt warmth, triumph. But the vindication that swept through me was strangely cold, like standing under icy rain. After years of erasure, acknowledgement arrived not gently, not tenderly, but in a blaze of spectacle. The murmurs faded as Callista suddenly lurched forward, scraping her chair across the polished floor. The sound shrieked like metal against bone. She shoved her way into the center, her posture brittle. "You set this up to embarrass me?" she spat, her voice cracking through the microphone system as she yanked it from the hands of a startled staff member. Several guests pulled back as though her rage might scorch them. Her voice shook, but she pushed it harder, louder. "You think flashing your credentials, your titles, makes you better than me? You think this makes you more important?" Her words echoed, sharp and jagged, before falling into a silence so complete it was almost physical. All eyes, all cameras, trained on her and me. I took one slow step forward from the cluster of guests. That was when I saw it, the ceremonial cake, rich chocolate mousse, glossy ganache perched atop a crystal pedestal near the stage, a symbol of the evening, meant to be shared in joy. Her gaze darted toward it. Something shifted in her posture. For one thin second she hesitated, her hand hovering. Then fury overtook restraint. She gripped the platter, lifted the entire cake, and in one violent motion hurled it at me. The room erupted in a collective gasp. Time slowed into shards. I saw the cake breaking mid-air, the layers collapsing, the mousse spilling forward. It struck me squarely across the face, thick frosting and soft sponge exploding outward. Sweetness filled my nostrils. I felt the sticky weight smear into my hair, sliding down my cheek, staining the neckline of my dress. The fragments splattered onto my clutch, oozing down my arms. Phones flashed. Dozens of them. Screens lit up like a constellation as people raised their devices. I smelled sugar and cocoa and something bitter, rancid beneath it. The stink of betrayal disguised as celebration. Callista's voice ripped through the chaos, raw and high-pitched. "This is your spotlight now, Odessa! Enjoy it!" Her shriek echoed against marble. I didn't move. I didn't wipe my face. I stood rooted, chest heaving, my eyes burning hotter than the frosting stung. The humiliation she intended pressed against me like fire, but beneath it, sharper, cleaner, rose something else. Defiance. Around me, hands shook. Guests stumbled back. Servers fled toward the kitchen, their trays rattling. The microphone Callista had dropped rolled across the stage with a hollow clatter. Someone in the crowd shouted the word, "Assault!" The hotel manager, red-faced and sweating, surged through the guests to the front. His voice was taut with authority. "Miss Rowe," he addressed me directly, though his eyes flicked nervously to Callista. "That was assault. Do you want to press charges?" The room buzzed. Murmurs, gasps, the hiss of whispered debates. I raised a hand slowly, smearing some of the frosting across my collarbone, feeling its weight. I pressed my fingertip into the sticky line, inhaled the mingled scent of chocolate, sugar, sweat, and heartbreak. I lifted my gaze and spoke, not shouting, but in a voice that carried to every corner. "This is what happens when truth collides with lies." The murmurs hushed. The cameras refocused. "You believed that erasing my name, rewriting history, and claiming my work would silence me." I turned my head toward Callista, who stood frozen, her lips trembling. "But you were wrong." The weight of my words filled the room. Guests shifted uneasily, some lowering their phones, others lifting them higher. The hotel's chandeliers glittered like judgment. Callista's face twisted, caught between anger and something darker. Fear, the polished mask she had worn so long, cracked visibly, her false armor falling away. I folded my gaze across the hall, not toward her, but toward the audience, the witnesses who could no longer claim ignorance. The manager still waited beside me, expectant, the word charges lingering in the air, but I didn't answer him. Instead, a sound began, small, hesitant applause. One table, then another, then swelling louder, rolling like a tide across the ballroom. Not for the spectacle, not for the mess on my face, but for dignity, for standing tall when cruelty tried to break me, for refusing to vanish. I didn't take another step forward. I didn't raise my voice again. But as I stood there, drenched in cake and truth, the crowd's clapping grew steady, certain, and in that moment, though the sweetness stung my eyes, though betrayal dripped from my dress, I knew I had won something real, something Callista could never take back again. The projector's light had only just dimmed when my phone buzzed again, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, vibrating so hard it rattled against the crystal glass in front of me. The sound was tiny, but it cut through the ballroom's murmurs like a needle. My stomach tightened as I reached for it. On the screen, a notification glowed, a social media alert. Callista had posted a story. I tapped it open, and the blood drained from my face. There I was, frozen in the ugliest frame of the night, chocolate frosting dripping down my hair, across my cheeks, staining the neckline of my dress. My eyes looked startled, raw. Over the image, Callista's words blazed in bright font. She crashed my gala. She's faking her title. That cake? Justified. Let the world see who Odessa Lynn really is. My breath caught sharp in my throat. For a moment, the hall swam. The chandeliers blurred. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, but the ground still seemed to tilt. Around me, phones lit up like a constellation as guests pulled hers up on their own screens. Some gasped, others laughed nervously. Conversations erupted in pockets, people crowding closer together, pointing at their phones, thumbs scrolling furiously, as if truth could be reshaped by a filter or erased with a finger flick. It was happening again, history repeating. She was twisting the narrative faster than I could breathe. I felt cold hands dragging across my skin, the familiar sting of betrayal that wasn't private anymore. It was public, amplified, going viral in real time. I stood rigid, pulse pounding, painfully aware that in seconds, her version of the story, false, cruel, polished, could drown me. I could feel it pressing down, the erasure she had engineered my entire life sharpening into one weaponized broadcast. Then, from the stage, the mic line crackled. Callista's voice carried through the hall, sharp and clear. "Yes," she announced, her smirk audible. "I posted it. And because she deserves exposure, for once." A few guests chuckled. Others murmured agreement, their voices low but cutting. Finally, someone saying it. A ripple of discomfort spread across the room. Some eyes flicked toward me in pity, others in judgment. I felt the weight of their sideways glances. Her accusations stung like a lash. But beneath the sting rose something deeper, fear. Not fear of Callista's power, but fear of silence, fear of being erased again, even when I had proof of who I was. And then, like a ripple parting water, Elise appeared. She pushed forward through the sea of white tablecloths and crystal glasses, delicate but resolute. Her steps were quick, her chin high. In her hand, held aloft like an offering, was a small USB drive that glimmered under the chandeliers. For a moment, it looked almost holy. "Wait," she called, her voice steady. The hum of conversations faltered. Heads turned. She raised the USB higher, the faint silver plastic catching light. "I have proof," she said. The murmurs swelled into silence. Even the AV technician by the booth paused, his fingers hovering mid-air. Callista's smirk flickered, just barely, but enough. Elise walked the rest of the way to the booth with the calm assurance of someone who had been waiting for this moment. She handed the drive to the technician, who glanced uncertainly at Callista, then at me. Finally, he slid it into the laptop. The screen flickered back to life. A video began to play. Grainy, time-stamped footage. Backstage, just hours earlier. The camera angle showed Callista in crisp resolution, standing with two members of the event staff. She gestured toward a preview monitor, where the slideshow for the evening was cued. "Just remove Odessa's name," her voice said, perfectly clear. "No one needs that confusion. Replace it with mine." The staff nodded. The screen showed the edit in real time. My name deleted. Hers typed in. The video froze on her face. Calm, casual, calculating. For one beat, the ballroom was silent. Then the dam broke. Gasps, outcries, phones snapping photos and videos of the projection. "Did you hear that?" someone hissed. "She ordered it." Another voice, louder. "How many times has she done this?" The room turned claustrophobic with truth, shrinking in on itself. People who had once leaned toward Callista now leaned away, shifting in their chairs. My throat tightened, but I forced myself upright. I didn't need to add anything. The images, the sound, were stronger than any speech. I let them play. I let them echo. The hotel manager pushed through the crowd toward me, his face set, his tone firm but respectful. "Miss Lynn," he said quietly, but the words carried. "We'll file an incident report regarding the cake attack. Your statement tonight will be important." His eyes locked on mine, steady, unwavering. For the first time in years, I saw not pity, not dismissal, but respect. I nodded once, a weight lifting from my chest. But even as it lifted, another heavier one remained. This wasn't over. Truth had cracked the surface, but battles lay ahead. Across the room, Callista stood frozen in place. Her face had drained of color, her lips pressed tight, her eyes darting wildly as though searching for an escape route. Her entire plan was collapsing around her, live, under the scrutiny of every gaze and every phone. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my clutch. From its depths, I pulled a sealed envelope. Thicker, heavier, not a credential, not an ID card. A contract. The final card I had been holding in silence. I placed it flat across my palm, letting the light catch the embossed edges. I didn't open it yet. I didn't need to. The sight of it was enough. Callista's throat worked as she swallowed. Her eyes darted between the contract and me. Her smirk was gone. What lingered now was something brittle, fragile. My lips curved faintly, just enough to show I was no longer cornered. The night wasn't over. It had only just begun. They thought the cake was the final blow, yet they hadn't seen what was hidden in plain sight. As voices buzzed and guests regained their bearings, I leaned toward the AV console, fingers steady despite the chaos. I had one more weapon, the contract I'd negotiated weeks ago. Tonight, it would speak louder than every insult thrown my way. I connected my laptop to the system. The screen flickered, then stabilized. A hush swept over the ballroom. The faces of Sterling Tech executives glowed in the projection light. The contract appeared. I walked forward, voice calm, composed. This is a valid Microsoft Sterling Tech agreement, authorized for signature tonight, pending final approval from me. I pressed play. The agreement scrolled into view. The clause I'd inserted was right there. This partnership is contingent upon all public-facing representatives maintaining decorum and zero tolerance toward any form of discriminatory conduct during all official events. I paused, letting the room absorb it. Then I highlighted it in bold. This was drawn up before tonight. It's not a bluff. My fingers hovered. A sudden show of strength. Callista's hand shot forward as she lunged toward the screen. The glass pedestal jostled. Security stepped in and blocked her path. She spat. "You wouldn't dare cancel it!" Her voice cracked under pressure. I inhaled slowly. I just did. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My tone was flat, resolute. The executives' faces were far away. The Sterling CEO stood, face ghost pale. "Wait, Odessa, give us a chance. A public apology, penalties, whatever you want." His voice quivered. I met eyes with him. Your silence during her assault said enough. Then I turned my back to face the rows of guests. The applause began softly, then swelled. It wasn't mocking. It was recognition. It was moral vindication. I raised my head. One voice muttered, "That's how power is reclaimed." Others nodded. Callista stood, disarmed. Her carefully constructed persona trembled. She couldn't speak. Her composure cracked. I reached for my clutch. The contract still projected overhead, a silhouette of calligraphy hovering above her downfall. I allowed myself a breath. Some debts aren't paid in dollars. They're paid in truth. Then I pivoted, stepping away. The applause grew, crescendoing. I strode past them into a corridor of muted lights, confident, unbroken, claiming the dignity that had been denied me. The night air outside still tasted of frost and neon light when I stepped out of that ballroom. The cold bit at my skin, sharp and clean, and I pulled my coat tighter around me as if to seal away what had just happened. I didn't look back. The spotlights, the gasps, the storm of voices, they stayed behind me as I crossed the marble plaza toward the waiting shuttle. My heels clicked against the stone, each step a reminder that something irreversible had shifted. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of silence, of headlines screaming louder than I ever could, of watching the fallout ripple across boardrooms and media feeds. Pain lingered, yes, but it was mixed now with something steadier, a deliberate reclaiming of myself. The fallout was immediate. Sterling Tech's stock plunged 11% in the first week. Business headlines bled across every outlet. Corporate coup at gala night. Cake assault scandal rocks Roe family event. Microsoft VP exposes Sterling deal in public showdown. Clips of the cake, of Callista's fury, of me standing still with mousse dripping down my hair. They spread like wildfire. Social media turned the moment into GIFs, memes, hashtags. Analysts debated ethics on primetime news. Callista's reputation cratered. Allies who had once sworn loyalty began to edge away, quiet in their retreat. I didn't chase any of it. I didn't respond to calls. I didn't draft any press statement. For once, I let the truth speak louder than my defense ever could. Hotel security filed an official assault report against Callista. Sterling Tech issued a statement pledging an internal review. Behind closed doors, board members began shifting allegiances, careful to distance themselves from her chaos. The machine that had always protected her finally sputtered. And me? I came home. Back to Seattle. Back to my small apartment perched over Lake Union, where dusk spills itself across the water like liquid silver. The city hums beyond my window, alive with movement. But here, the water is still, a mirror to the sky. Some nights, when the quiet wraps around me, I feel a tenderness for the sister I once thought I knew. A younger Callista, laughing in our childhood room, braiding my hair before school. I wonder where that girl went. Or maybe she never existed. Either way, I am learning to accept she may never return. This evening, my phone rang. Dad. Just his name on the screen tightened my chest. I answered, voice steady though my hands shook. His words came softly, haltingly. Your sister isn't well. Maybe you could come over. I couldn't reply, not yet. The line filled with silence, then ended. I folded my legs on the sofa and stared out across the lake. The city reflected back at me in 1,000 points of light. Forgiveness, I am realizing, is not forgetting. It isn't erasing the wound. It's acknowledging the truth, then choosing not to let it chain you anymore. Time doesn't stitch everything closed overnight, but distance helps, and honesty heals more than denial ever could. On my kitchen table lies a letter, creased, handwritten, sent from Detroit. The envelope was plain. Inside, the words stopped me cold. I saw your story. I'm the youngest too. One day I want to stand like you did. Thank you. The handwriting was shaky, the kind of scrawl you recognize as belonging to someone young, still finding themselves. My eyes burned as I traced the lines. That single note became my anchor, proof that even if family silence tried to erase me, my voice had reached someone who needed it. Tonight, instead of drafting statements or avoiding news feeds, I set up my tripod by the window. No ring lights, no makeup teams, no curated stage, just the city skyline glowing behind me and the reflection of the lake below. I pressed record. My voice was quiet, but steady. If they tell you you don't belong, build the room yourself and lock the door behind you. That was my mic drop, not for the press, not for vindication, for the girl in Detroit, and for every unheard voice who carries scars that never make the slideshows or the family flyers. And maybe that's the real lesson I needed 3 weeks to learn. The people who work hardest to silence you are often the ones most afraid of your voice. This was never about titles, positions, or cake flying across a ballroom. It was about space, about reclaiming the seat at the table they swore wasn't mine. So I'll end my message the way I wish someone had ended theirs for me years ago. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? What would you have done standing in that ballroom with the lights hot on your skin? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your truth. And if this story stirred something in you, even a spark, don't forget to hit subscribe. There's more to come. Real stories, real voices, real power. Because this isn't just my victory, it belongs to everyone who's ever been erased and chose to step back into the light.